Everything's working, so that's good. All right, so we'll kind of get started with introductions so that you know who's here speaking to you in this kind of odd impersonal virtual space that we're going to try to make as personal as we can by really allowing you to ask the questions that you want while getting a brief overview of our School of Education. So we will start with introductions. My name is Melody Ferguson. I'm the Dean of Admission at PLU, and I'm just serving as the moderator and question asker today. What's great is I don't have to know anything in this moment. I just get to listen and learn alongside the students that are here. And I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves. Ryan, why don't you start?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Ryan Branchini. I'm the Admission Advising and Certification Specialist for the School of Education. And I primarily work with our undergraduate students as their academic advisor, those who are pursuing elementary education, but I support all students in the School of Education in some capacity.
Yeah, he's my go-to question answerer. John, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is John Wright. I'm an assistant professor of education. I focus on special education and I work primarily in the undergraduate population, but I teach in all of our graduate programs, typically in the summer or in the fall. So that includes master's programs, our add-on endorsement classes, and our new doctoral program.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, lots of avenues within the School of Education. So we're going to get started with kind of a brief overview that might answer some of your initial questions. And as you're listening, please feel free to put in questions. There's a Q&A feature at the bottom you can use. You can use the chat. I'll check both. And then when we're done with that, we will jump into your questions you either provided earlier or you provide during this session. So Ryan, go ahead and hopefully it works to share your screen and take it away.
All right, almost there.
I know. I don't do Zoom as often. I feel not as capable as I used to.
Yes. All right.
It's working.
Hooray. There we go. Well, we are at PLU. And so we always like to start off with just some quick facts about our School of Education programs. We have a 98% job placement for our students that graduate both at the undergrad and graduate level. We are a structured program around caring staff and faculty. The first, people always think about careers in education. Does it pay? Yes, it does. The annual first-year salary in the state of Washington for students with an undergraduate degree is a little over $48,000. And those that go through our master's program, it's $53,000. We have a 100% exceeds principal expectations, which is a really great feedback we get as students graduate from PLU and go into our communities. And for those of you who are wondering, that is the flag for Namibia. It is one of our many opportunities for students to study away, but we have a flagship program for our undergrad students to do a semester as part of their academic journey in Africa, specifically in Namibia. So I don't know, John, when you would like to jump in at all, but just a quick program overview for our undergrad students. It is a 2-year program, 4 semesters, 2 J terms. It starts in fall of your junior year and interweaves theory and practice. These are our guiding principles for both of our undergrad and graduate programs. And Dr. Wright, I'm not sure if you wanted to talk a little bit more about these.
Yeah, I can jump in. Can you go back one slide really quickly?
Oh, sure.
So one of the things about our undergraduate programs, and people often ask, is like, why starting in the junior year? PLU is interesting because oftentimes you sort of do 2 years worth of general education courses, or you start taking minor, sometimes major area courses. You study abroad sometimes. About 50% of our students study away in some capacity. And then by the time the junior year comes, they jump head first into education courses. And the reason why that's important to note, whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student, we're an applied program, which means once you are all in with us and we're all in with you, you go to courses and you are in classrooms. So your junior year, you're in the same classroom your whole year working with a cooperating teacher who we've hand selected with you, whether you're a junior or senior. You get one your junior year, one your senior year. Sometimes you get more than one placement. If you're interested in, let's say, doing special education and general education, you may have 2 placements. But the reason why we talk about it starting your junior year is because it's a pretty comprehensive program. If you're not in class with me or one of my colleagues here at PLU, you're in class with a local elementary school teacher, since we're an LED focused program. And then in our graduate program, you will be in class here, or you will be in, depending on your certification area, a elementary, middle, or high school teacher for the duration of your time with us. And as far as our guiding principles, I like to summarize these up sort of the same way PLU talks about inquiry and care. But I think because teaching is a caregiving profession, I look at all of these bullet points and think we're trying to create a competent, caring professional who will stay in the teaching field for their lifetime, which means once you're one of our graduates, you're always connected to us. So our ability to help you network for jobs never ends. When you need resources or mentoring, like we're still here. So it's kind of over the lifetime of your career as a teacher, we're here for you. And that's what these mean, I think, to us here at PLU.
So one of the things we like to celebrate here at PLU is that both of our undergrad and graduate programs are cohort models. So they're not this large as the amount of students here in our field, but we do have a model where you start and end the program together, either the 2-year undergraduate pathway or the 1-year graduate. And it's a really great structure to build community, relationships, both personal and professional, long-term. Well, I hate to say relationships again, but it is with your cohort model.
And those cohorts, they're sort of, think of them as sort of like they're a built-in support system. You take the same classes together, but you're in different placements out in schools. So you'll go experience different things and you'll come back to the classroom and say, oh, I experienced this in my 3rd grade classroom. What did you say in your, kindergarten classroom when you were in your applied program portion? We should also say that within the undergraduate, there are kind of 2 avenues. So you're an elementary education major, and then you can opt into one of 2 pathways. One takes you into a special education endorsement. So when you graduate, you will be a certified elementary school teacher, and you'll get a dual certification in special education, K to 12. Or you can go into more of a literacy, which is multilingual learning and reading endorsement. So when you graduate, you are an elementary school teacher and you have a reading specialist or a reading endorsement on top of that. It makes you more marketable. Sometimes it gives you a higher paying job. Most of our graduates go into a teaching position first before they transition into like a specialist position. For our graduate students, it's a 1-year program, and we've sort of talked about how that applied program is come and do your coursework and your applied placement in 1 year, and then you're certified in whatever subject area that you're there seeking. So you get a master's in education with a certification in, let's say, high school science or biology or middle school art, something like that.
So one of the key components of both of our undergrad and graduate programs is the field experience, like Dr. Wright was just discussing a little bit, is that we really do believe in having both that applied practice and the learn practice as well. So for our undergrad students, you always have a minimum hours that you're in the schools each term, the same with our graduate students. So for example, during your year, you're doing 45 hours in fall of your first term. It goes up to 90 hours. And by the time you're a senior in spring semester, you're doing 15 weeks of student teaching. And that also applies for our graduate students during their final term, as they're doing 15 weeks of student teaching. But we really do believe in incorporating having as much field experience as possible. So it kind of, this says 790 hours of field experience. It roughly adds up to that. Some students have more, but we do have those minimums in place for both of our programs for sure.
And the great thing about the placements, one, it means that we know a lot of people, we know a lot of schools and school districts, and it actually does help when it comes to getting jobs, because we have people on first name basis with principals and superintendents. The other thing about being able to place is, depending on where you geographically live, we have some current graduate students who are placed in the Seattle area, which is over an hour away from our campus. And I know we've placed people down towards Olympia, which is, more than an hour in the other direction. So we have someone who's part of our, Ryan and my colleague, who works on placements, and as best as possible, we try to geographically work with you. Sometimes we can't get exactly where you want to be, but the majority of our undergraduates and graduate students are relatively close in or around Tacoma. I would say within a 20-minute to 30-minute drive, but sometimes circumstances may require you to request, oh, can I be in Seattle, or can I be in a King County school? And then we would work to find a placement a little further away.
I think, here's just some of our district partners that we have at Pacific Lutheran University. So Dr. Wright was mentioning Tacoma school districts. PLU is actually in the neighborhood of the Franklin Pierce schools. We're also very near the Bethel School District, but we do have candidates that are placed all throughout the area, including those near the campus, and of course, some that are further away. And we have our field placement coordinator that takes care of all of those placement details. They work with our students to ensure that you're placed based on your endorsement, age, demographic that you want to work with, and also transportation needs are taken into account as well. So we were talking a little bit or alluding to a little bit about endorsements. And so for our undergrad pathways, for the Bachelor's of Art in Education, which I like to just call BAE, and sometimes our students call BAE for short, is our students earn an elementary education, which is a kindergarten through 8th endorsement. And then you also earn an additional endorsement in either English language learners, special education, or reading. I will note that English language learners is paired with reading, and those endorsements are preschool through 12th grade. We also at PLU and our colleagues in kinesiology and the Department of Music can go more in depth about this if you want to learn more, have a health fitness K-12 endorsement, and then a music with either choral or instrumental K-12 endorsement as well at the undergraduate level. So those are the pathways if you're looking at undergraduate degrees to becoming a certified teacher at PLU. We also have, as Dr. Wright was mentioning, for our graduate programs, we have a large list of secondary pathways. So if you're looking at teaching traditionally older students, maybe middle school or high school, or a specific kind of content area, I'm not going to list all of them here because it is a long list, but typically the sciences, languages, math, art, English language learners, special education, and elementary are also available at the graduate level, I wanted to note, including special education. So there are multiple pathways to explore going into teacher certification at PLU. Typically with this pathway, it's a 4+1. So 5 years at PLU. So what we do is encourage our students to earn a degree in a content area you want to teach. Let's go with biology since it's first on the list. So earn a degree in biology. So you focus on your gen eds, you get that undergraduate degree in biology, and then enter our 1-year Master's of Art in Education program. Most of our MAE cohort, I would say about 50% or so, is current students are made up of more recent alum who just completed their undergraduate degree and who are now doing that 5th year at PLU.
And I think it's important to note that for education programs and for being a relatively small school, we have a lot of options. So you can go straight LEd, like Ryan was saying. You have all of these other endorsements that you can go into, which require 1 additional year of school. So it's your 5th year, but you leave having already earned your bachelor's, getting your master's degree in a subject and focused area that you really want to teach in. That's pretty unusual to have this wide variety. And then on top of that, there's some other options for more advanced educators. So you can always come back to PLU if you've been a teacher for a while and you want to become a principal. We have a principalship program. If you want to get a doctorate, we have a doctorate program. So I like to think that we're kind of the lifespan of an educator. So I know you're probably thinking undergraduate or graduate right now, but just know that we have something kind of for everyone, regardless of where you are in the cycle of your teaching career.
Absolutely. I always like to, when I'm in the middle of advising undergrad students right now, and I always like to say that once you earn your certification, this is just one step forward in your teaching career, but there's always opportunities to add on endorsements, add on credentials. So that's a great thing about going into education as a career, because it just doesn't end once you're done with a particular degree or endorsement. One thing that I know is a question we often receive is, can you earn both a Bachelor's of Art in Education and a Master's of Art in Education at PLU? Answer is no, you have to do one or the other. And the reason is that they're both teacher certification programs at PLU. So either you earn the BAE or the MAE, but we don't offer both to our students. So I just wanted to make that note, because that is a question that often comes up, and just something I wanted to share right now, because that might be a question you're thinking of. Earlier, I mentioned the Study Away program in Namibia. Like I said, this is a great opportunity for our undergraduate students to do an entire semester. So spring semester of your junior year as an opportunity to be in Namibia, to take the education courses that you would normally take at PLU in our cooperating university program partnership, and work with those students. And of course, you get to experience Africa in a different explorational conceptual way, working with not only the population, but then exploring the country. It's a really great opportunity, but this is just one opportunity for our students. I know that we have a new program that Dr. Wright could probably shed a little bit more light on about what we're offering for our J-term students.
Sure. So unlike more traditional programs, we have a J term. So it's our kind of our winter term, our January term. The majority of our students who study away for a month. It's the month of January. And historically, we would have a Namibia program for a month. That is sort of transitioning to only be a semester-long program in the spring. Replacing the Namibia program in the J term is a new program starting this coming January to Switzerland. So we will be taking a cohort of 17 juniors and seniors to be teaching assistants for 1 month in dual language, English, German elementary schools in the month of January. So it's our first time doing it. We're really excited about the program. It's sort of our guinea pig year to see how it goes. It's likely going to be successful. I hope it is. I'm running it. So if it's successful, we'll replicate it each year with some other potential programs in the future. It's not to say that you can't study away in other places. We have a robust catalog of study abroad, study away programs. So I had a student who is a music ed student who studied in Trinidad and Tobago, who also is now interested in coming to Switzerland. So there are lots of opportunities for education students to study away.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's a really great point that you mentioned, Dr. Wright, about opportunities that, while we have very specific ones in the School of Education, like Namibia and Switzerland, our Wong Center for Global Engagement and Education, I might have gotten that wrong, but something along those lines. There are plenty of opportunities for students to study away both in different semesters, fall, spring, and J-term, which can also be incorporated as you're completing your gen eds during your first year, sophomore year, before starting the very structured degree pathway like the BAE program. Let's see. Well, these are some education prerequisites, very exciting things for our undergrad majors. We're, again, starting in your fall, you're going to be at junior status. We have some prerequisite courses, some co-requisite courses. This also is applicable to our graduate program. There are prerequisites, some testing, some fingerprints that for all of our candidates. So we won't spend too much time on this slide, because getting into all those kinds of details might not be most relevant for you right now. So other ways to stay engaged at PLU, in addition to, I know sometimes we hear from students that they want to start right away in the majors, but part of a liberal arts degree is focusing on your gen eds and preparing you for your degree pathway. So there are ways to stay engaged with some extracurricular activities like Club Heathley, Parkland Literacy Center, the Benson Lecture, which we are hosting next week, actually in person on campus at PLU. And we also offer a course at the undergraduate level called Multicultural Perspectives in the Classroom, which is a pathway course for students who are thinking about education. Maybe they're not sure, or maybe they are very sure that they want to be teachers, but this is a great way to work with education faculty. And sometimes there's a practicum element as well to that course. And it's also a good way to meet your potentially future peers in the cohort before your junior year or when you're in the MAE program.
One of the newer things, it's not new to PLU, but sort of the structure has changed, which is we have a first year experience program that all first year students have to take a class in their fall semester and their spring semester. And we have education faculty that teach in the first year experience program. One is very specifically related to education, which is the multicultural perspectives. But we have other courses that are sort of like introduction to being in this kind of profession, with the theme of like how to write like a professional. So there are ways for you to start slowly like building your repertoire of education courses without officially declaring your major and starting your junior year all in with your education classes.
Absolutely. And I think we're down to questions time. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and rejoin just the Zoom group and see what kind of questions we may have received. And
yeah, that's great. And you answered some of them already, but I might have you dive a little deeper depending on the question. But somebody asked about, kind of, you mentioned this really great success rate of getting people hired after getting their certification. What are maybe some of the things they can make sure they do while they're a student here to make sure they're in that high percentage? So are there certain experiences that are really good? Are there, again, they have courses, but are there things that you think make someone a successful teaching candidate?
that's a very good question. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll take a sort of a professor perspective on this. I think there are two things. One, take advantage of opportunities to network with professionals, whether it's on campus or going to, like 2 weeks ago, there was a job fair at the Tacoma Dome where a lot of our students went, they showed up, they got to interview on the spot with principals and superintendents and got their name out there, got their resume in the hands of people who hire. So take advantage of that because we're pretty well networked. I think the most important thing for you to get a job, and a job that you want, not just any teaching job, is the applied part of your work here. You're going to be in schools. Do that really well. Be very teachable. Like you don't have to know everything, but when you go into these schools, be useful to your cooperating teacher, be like a sponge and learn as much as you can, ask really good questions, and be like a very good consumer of that experience, because that is how principals on that campus and other campus learn about you. Teachers know a lot of other teachers and they're like, oh, we don't have an open position, but I had this great student teacher in second grade, and they talk up our graduates, especially the ones who work hard, teach well, and take their coaching well, which is their job, is to kind of coach you through 2 years worth of kind of an apprenticeship almost. That's the number one way to get the job that you want, is to be coachable and teachable, and do the things that professionals do. Professional dispositions are really important. You show up on time, you look like a teacher, you act like a teacher. Even when you don't feel like a teacher, in front of these little people, you are a teacher. So doing those things will put you in that 100% job category. I don't know, Ryan, are there other things that they need to be doing?
Yeah, no, that's really insightful, Dr. Wright. Thank you. I was going to say our Associate Dean of Education, Dr. Jan Weiss, likes to say that when our students are in their practicum placements, whether that's their junior or senior year, which in senior year is your student teaching, is you're in a very long-term job interview, basically, as you're working with a district, with teachers who are already professionals, your principal, your superintendent on occasion. So you're already in the midst of a long-term job interview. And that's a great way to also network, as Dr. Wright was saying. In addition to the career fair that happens every year that we take our students to and support and help them look for jobs, one of the things that you can just think about as you're planning long-term are what are high need areas for teachers. Elementary is one of those areas. Special education is an area. English language learners is an area. The science and math are both endorsements that are highly coveted or in need right now, not just in the state of Washington, but nationally. So that's just something to be mindful of. I will say history and English language arts or English are while there are job opportunities for those, in comparison to the need for elementary special education and those other endorsements I mentioned are what districts are looking for. So that's just something to be mindful of as you're planning. So if you're thinking about like history or English, think about pairing it with English language learners or special education, how to make yourself more marketable that way. I also will just note that Washington State has one of the highest standards for certification in the nation. And so reciprocity is a thing in which you can teach not just in Washington, but across the nation. We have students at PLU who are currently enrolled who are from Hawaii, California. We've had alum from Florida, Montana, Idaho, Alaska. And many of those students have gone back to teach in their home states, again, based on the high standards for certification in the state of Washington. And we also have students who are looking at pathways for teaching internationally. All those details are a little bit more complex that I can't answer today, but I will say that that is a pathway that you can consider as well if you're looking at staying either in Washington or teaching outside of the state of Washington.
And another thing that I wanted to note too is the job fair creates interesting experiences. We recently had one here, and I know one of our graduate students who was willing and open. She's getting a certification in something in secondary, but also an endorsement in special education. She signed a letter of intent with a school, with Palm Springs, California School District, because she interviewed well. They were offering like a $12,000 sign-on bonus because they desperately need special educators in high schools there. And she thought, that's an opportunity I don't want to pass up because she's young and she can be mobile. So what I like about a teaching degree is you can pretty much go anywhere. It's a very portable degree, especially because we're in a state like Washington that has such a high threshold that other states recognize our certifications, which essentially means they don't have to like often do much other than just like transfer their certification from Washington to the new state. They don't have to do additional coursework usually or additional testing. That I don't think that is usually the case for most other locations.
Correct, yeah. So for the most part, with all of our testing that's in place for the state of Washington, as you would look to other states, sometimes you might have to take like a state history, like we want you to have Pacific Northwest history here for the state of Washington, but if you go to Texas, they want you to have Texas state history. So that might be an additional requirement, but typically it's a very straightforward process.
Yeah, thanks. That was one of the questions on the list. So it's been crossed off. That's good. Someone just put a question in the Q&A. So we'll go to that one before we go to some of the others that were given to us ahead of time. As a good reminder to anyone else, feel free to put them in there. I think this is sometimes the confusing part for people, right? We have a 4-year program. We have a 5-year program. We have some bachelor's degrees that are 5 years, right? Music education. So we have these various tracks within business. So I think the question is, what's the difference? But I think the bigger question too, and I think it would be helpful, Ryan, after you ask that question, is maybe to help students understand how you can help them on this kind of, to advise them on this path to, this looks complicated. How do I know I'm on the right path and doing the right thing?
Absolutely. Well, I guess the first thing I always think about is, what do you want to teach, right? Do you want to go into elementary education? Do you want to do a secondary? That's the first thing. So the Bachelor's of Art BAE program at PLU, the focus is elementary education. And yes, there is music and health and fitness with their own pathways. But if you're thinking of specifically, I want to be a Spanish teacher, a biology teacher, a history teacher, that is the 5-year pathway. That is your undergraduate degree plus the 1-year master's program. If you also say, I need to think about it, I need some exploration, that is okay. That's what college is all about. And again, that's why these pathways exist. So maybe you are someone who is interested in, say, psychology or a language, but you want to teach elementary eventually. and you're like, I'm going to take my 4 years of my undergraduate degree to focus on that degree, like psychology. And then you still have that 1 year pathway towards teaching elementary education through the Masters of Art in Education program. So, but I think that's the biggest sorry, I'm fumbling on my words now at the point of the distinctions between the two programs is for elementary education, if that is what you want to do, the focus is supporting you through the BAE program. And if you really are thinking secondary pathway, that is the 1 year master's program. That's the simplest way to kind of break that down. And so there is myself that helps with our undergraduate students, specifically with elementary education. There are faculty advisors for both music education and kinesiology. And then we also have our Assistant Dean of Education, Dr. Mary Jo Larson, who is the faculty advisor or staff advisor for the Masters of Art in Education program. We also have information sessions for the Masters of Art in Education program regularly throughout the year. It's online, it's on Zoom. Another Zoom experience if you're interested to learn more that way. So I guess that's the best way to think about those two pathways.
Yeah, it's sometimes just complicated when I'm talking to like a high school student who wants to be a teacher and they don't realize there's all these levels to certification within education, but there are usually benefits to that too. So my husband happens to be a teacher, so I like to think I have a little bit of knowledge about his pathway, but you know, he needed to get a master's degree in order to get a raise within his job, right? So teachers' salaries are very public. And I think that's actually a really interesting thing if you're looking at education is to look at salary ranges, and you can look at what the salaries are for a bachelor's degree versus a master's degree. And so sometimes students will use even that as a point of deciding what path they want to go down. Or I think like Ryan said, you're not quite ready to commit. So the master's program is a really nice option. And if you're a PLU alum, if you get your bachelor's degree from PLU and decide to stay for that 5th year, that 1 year master's, you do get a discount on tuition. So a 10% discount on tuition. So there are some benefits to kind of wrap them all together and do that 5-year plan at PLU. But you don't have to know that when you start here. So I think that's the biggest thing is it's like, oh my gosh, I have to make this decision. I have to get on the right track. But there's a lot of time, especially in your first year, to really discern what path is best for you based on exactly like Ryan said, where you want to teach, what you want to teach, what environment you want to be in, all of those things. So yeah, it seems kind of confusing. So I appreciate the question because I think that was really good. Like, why are there so many things? But I promise you it makes sense. And it's all done to get you employed in the job, in the school that you want to be in. And I think that's, it's a very student-focused reason why it seems very confusing.
No, I think I appreciate you sharing that, Melody. And I would just add that, you know, there's lots of opportunity to explore. And one of the things I have learned in my nearly 8.5 years here at PLU supporting future teachers is that for the most part, students know they want to be teachers and they know what grade they want to teach or what content they want to teach. So that kind of helps, but that's not everybody. Sometimes there is that opportunity to explore, and it also depends on where you're coming. Some students do the 4-year path, come in as a first year and do all their gen eds at PLU plus the degree, whether that leads to the bachelor's or the additional year at master's. Oftentimes we have running start students who have an associate's degree who are looking at which path is best for me, doing 2 years at the undergrad level, or should I explore a little bit and then do the 1 year master's program. So there's not one size fits all, but there's definitely lots of pathways and definitely lots of people here to help you explore which one is best for you.
Yeah, that's great. Dr. Wright, can you talk about your favorite class to teach and why?
Well, I'll say that I think my favorite class is going to be teaching comparative education in Switzerland.
I think it should be too, and I would like to go.
Develop that class. So that is a future class. I think my favorite class to teach is a foundations in special education, because it is a group it's the cohort, but it is everyone together instead of people who know they want to have a special education endorsement or an ELL or reading endorsement. you will have classes as a cohort and then sometimes as little separate subgroups. And I like the cohort coming together to give them a foundational understanding of special education, because every student who is a special education gets special education services is first and foremost a general education student. They happen to get special education services in public school, which is a legal thing. And framing it that way makes sense for general education, for students who want to teach in general education classrooms, to know that gone are the days when you can say like, those special education students aren't my students. That's incorrect. They are your students, because they are special education students, are first and foremost gen ed students, which means I get to lay the foundation for like really compassionate, effective, evidence-based instruction for all kinds of students, including those who have disabilities. And that's really rewarding when I talk with students who go out and teach and they come back and say, oh, the thing that we learned about in class that you said would support that kid with disabilities, it's actually also helpful for these other kind of kids in my class. So this universal design for learning is really impactful. And I like hearing that from our students. So that's the most rewarding thing for me.
Yeah, I think that also goes back to what Ryan was mentioning about like the community that's developed within the education program, because of the cohort, you end up with people you can rely on, not just while you're a student here, but I was recently listening to a couple alums talk about how they still call the people in their cohorts when they're having a bad day teaching or a good day teaching, or they become kind of lifelong learners together. And I think it probably happens in some of those classes. We just have time for a couple more questions. And I have one that we get a lot from families, because I still think there's rumors out there that you can't make a living as a teacher. You can't, that it's not a profession in which you're going to be able to buy a house and raise a family, right? And again, I have a husband who's a teacher, so I feel really strongly about the answer to this question, but I'm going to let both of you maybe talk about what's the reality of that these days, and how can we maybe change some of that, that way of thinking?
Yeah.
So I can start with a pragmatic approach, which is teachers are known to be lifelong learners. So once you have a degree and a certification, you're required to keep up your education, to stay current on things. Your school district, your school will require you to do this. Oftentimes that leads to further education. You get continuing education credits, you get micro credentials. Sometimes you didn't expect to get a master's degree, but here you are 5 years later and you're finishing a master's degree because you've kind of put together these courses that led you in that direction. So because of the lifelong learnership of teachers, the more you educate yourself, the higher salary is. So every year you get a salary increase. Like Ryan was saying, in Washington, we're one of the highest starting incomes. So it's just south of 50,000. And I think over the next probably 3 to 4 years, it'll probably be at 50,000 for starting teachers. But as you get years of service, it adds $500, $1,000, $2,000 per year, so that I know if I were to leave higher education and go and teach kindergarten, which is what I did before I was in higher ed, because I taught for 12 years and I have beyond a master's degree, that adds up to more than a 6-figure job, which blows people's minds to think like, oh, a kindergarten teacher in Tacoma with 12 years of experience could make 130,000. You pull up the public salaries. So Tacoma School District, for example, every school district does their salary schedules. It can be a very comfortable living if salary is one of the driving things, which we're teachers, so we're not known to be like driven for the money, but there is an opportunity in a state like Washington to make a significant living. It also means that you stick with it, right? Like the longer you invest into the profession, the higher your salary goes. So that is great for states like Washington. There's a few other states that do that.
Yeah.
There are some states that don't pay their teachers well, and we wouldn't want you to move to because we want to keep you here. But I think it's a little bit of a fallacy to say that teacher salaries are low, because they're above national average of the starting salary for college grads. So I don't know, Ryan, your thoughts?
Well, I thought you put it very well, Dr. Wright. I was like, the ability to absolutely add to your credentials, your experience, does help you with your salary growth for sure. The numbers I shared earlier in the presentation about, about $40,000 for a starting salary for undergrad students and 55,000 for starting MAE candidate. That is the average first year for the entire state of Washington. So we're taking all the school districts across both Eastern and Western Washington for those figures. So there are going to be districts that actually have higher salaries for first year students that are completing an undergrad or graduate degree. I know that I always talk to students about how there is a national teacher shortage.
Yeah.
That is the reality. And districts are willing to, not all, because again, there are definitely budget limitations and things like that, but there are certain districts that are willing to negotiate and go after teachers and pay them a wage where I'm like, maybe I should become a certified teacher and go into the field. So that's just something to be mindful of. And again, whether that's staying in Washington or looking at taking your credentials to another state like California, where again, we had a graduate student that was offered $12,000 as a signing bonus for a job in Palm Springs. Some districts are becoming more and more creative on not only recruiting teachers, but retaining teachers. And that's something that I know that is a larger conversation, is how do we keep teachers in the field? And one of those realities is salary.
Yeah. No,
Well, and
thanks for sharing. Go
I
ahead.
just pulled up, I won't name the district, but it is one that I could drive to very quickly from where I'm sitting right now in Parkland. And their first year, 0 years experience, first year salary for a teacher with a bachelor's degree in education is $68,534.
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong salary for a zero experience first year teacher. And
Right
that
out
could
of
be
school.
had, nearby, which
Yeah.
is common for a lot of our graduates do stay relatively
Yeah.
close.
Mhm.
Some do return home, but now that's a little bit of an outlier because salaries in this part of Western Washington are probably slightly higher than more rural parts. But that's a realistic salary that is on the books that you can pull up today. So it's good to know.
No, I know it's always that, but there's just so much too. And I think we talked about, you also have a pretty flexible schedule as a teacher in terms of sometimes you get afternoons off or you get breaks, right? So it also is a nice kind of family schedule sometimes if you are thinking of kind of
Absolutely.
raising a family in some ways. And I know we can talk all day about there's loan repayment programs you can get as a teacher if you're willing to teach certain places. You can coach for extra salary, right? Or like be an after school specialist of some kind. So there's also just a lot of ways in which to earn more if that is something that you're really thinking about. But most people go into teaching because they want to teach, but they want to know that they can also, support their household. So so we're going to end with I hope an easy question that we've been ending all of these with. And that is obviously the students in this space or the students that will watch this video later, they are deciding why PLU. Should I choose PLU? So I'm curious if you guys each have a kind of, quick and easy answer of maybe why you choose to work and teach at PLU. So Ryan, do you want to start?
Sure. I have been asked this question by students and sometimes colleagues, and I always say, after being here 8.5 years, that why PLU is because it really truly is a caring community that is about supporting all of our students. So while we are in the School of Education, I see that happen with all majors for all students exploring all different academic pathways. And so I really do appreciate that commitment to supporting our students and providing that environment and space for them to thrive and grow and stay connected, both with our cohort models, but then also be connected globally as our students do, both whether that's study away opportunities, which is a huge part of PLU's mission, but also staying connected with our alum. I'm always pleasantly and wonderfully surprised. Well, I didn't go to PLU, I work here, but when I'm walking around in my PLU gear, I've lost count of how many times I've been stopped, like, PLU, I graduated, 5 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. There is definitely a sense of community and relations that everyone has when they think about PLU and Lutz.
Well, and Ryan used the care one, but that would have been my go-to response. So my second response is authenticity. So students who come here get to be their true selves. And whether it's you're a neurodiverse student or you're really interested in inclusive pedagogy or anti-racist pedagogy, we've got something for all of our students because we believe that like curiosity and inquiry make good professionals. So we want to help foster passionate professionals in whatever they want to do, like help them to the next step, whether it's in education or in the dorm that you live in. You're going to find this respect for the individual you are that you bring to the table, and that we care about your personal and professional growth. And I think a lot of colleges say that. That's like the tagline or motto for a lot of colleges. But at a school like PLU, because we're not massively large, it is not a place where you can get lost or fall through the cracks. Like people know your name. You know, my experience with my undergraduates, if someone doesn't come to class and they haven't emailed me, I know how to get a hold of someone in the cohort, either by phone or email or text, and be like, what's going on? I'm worried about someone. And it's like a week to week thing. Like we care at the point that like their absence is not problematic. Like, where were you? But like the general concern that they're okay, because we can work on whatever you missed in class. But if something's going on with you academically, socially, emotionally, that you need support with, we're here for that too. And I think when you come to PLU, we sign up for being that whole person support, not just support for the one area in which we align, which happens to be education for Ryan and myself, but for you as an individual. And I think that's the difference that we make.
Yeah, I loved both of those answers. So we appreciate you coming tonight. I want to just leave with letting everyone know that if you need to get in touch with someone in the School of Education, you have more specific questions, let myself or your admission counselor know, and we know how to get in touch with our colleagues. We are physically located across the hall from each other, so usually we just wander over to the other office when we have a question. So you have kind of great resources out there. And one of the things I love about working at PLU is that I've never reached out to someone to say, hey, can you answer this question? Or can you talk to this prospective student? I've never received a no. Usually someone's really excited to engage with someone around their questions. We kind of love that at PLU. So please reach out with more questions. We hope this was helpful as you're discerning if our College of Education is the right place for you and our college in general. And we appreciate you joining us this evening. And thank you to both of my colleagues for coming. And we will hopefully see you on campus soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.